Commander Talia Reeves pressed her palm against the viewport, feeling the cold seep through the reinforced glass. Beyond, the stars grew sparse, the ragged edge of the Milky Way giving way to the vast intergalactic void. "Status report," she called, not turning from the view. Lieutenant Damian Webb looked up from his console. "Telemetry stable, Commander. We're maintaining position at the galactic boundary marker. Quantum sensors are picking up something, but I can't classify it." The Nebula Seeker had been dispatched to investigate anomalous signals detected by the Long-Range Observatory on Europa. 6 months of travel to reach a place where humanity had never ventured, the true edge of the galaxy, where the spiral arm they called home thinned to nothing. "Define something, Lieutenant," Talia said, finally turning to face her bridge crew. Damien's dark eyes reflected the glow of his holographic display. "It's like whispers, pattern recognition software can't lock on, but there's definitely information being transmitted. It's just not using any protocol we recognize." Chief Science Officer Lyon Park joined them, her silver-streaked hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Commander, I have a theory. What if it's not meant for us to understand?" "Explain," Talia ordered, taking her command chair. "Most communication systems we've encountered were designed by species with similar sensory apparatuses, eyes, ears, tactile interfaces. But what if whatever lies beyond the galactic edge evolved completely differently? Their concept of communication might be fundamentally alien to us." The bridge fell silent. Humanity had encountered 12 different sentient species in the 3 centuries since achieving faster-than-light travel, but all shared basic biological commonalities. What Park suggested was something truly other. "Communications Officer Ravi," Talia called. "Any progress translating the signal?" Annika Ravi shook her head, adjusting her neural interface crown. "I've run it through every known linguistic algorithm, Commander. It's not just a different language, it's a different method of conveying information entirely. The quantum fluctuations within the signal vary in ways that suggest deliberate modulation, but the pattern, it's like trying to read a book written in 4 dimensions." Talia drummed her fingers on the armrest of her chair. The Nebula Seeker's mission was to investigate, not make contact, but something about the signals tugged at her consciousness, a rhythm that felt almost familiar. "Permission to try something unorthodox, Commander?" Ravi asked, her hands already moving across her interface. "Proceed." "Instead of trying to translate the signal into something we understand, I'm going to try broadcasting our neural patterns directly. Basic emotional states, mathematical concepts." "You want to send them our thoughts?" Park interjected, alarmed. "Not exactly, more like the shape of our thinking, the metacognitive architecture underneath." Talia considered the proposal. Standard protocol advised caution in first contact situations, but they were already far beyond standard operational parameters. "Do it," she ordered, "but passive broadcast only, 5 minutes then we reassess." As Ravi initiated the transmission, the ship's lights flickered momentarily. On the main view screen, the void beyond the galaxy's edge seemed to deepen, as if the darkness itself was focusing attention on them. "Signal broadcasting," Ravi confirmed, then her eyes widened. "Commander, I'm getting a response." The bridge view screen filled with shifting patterns of light, not random, but not immediately recognizable either. Fractal geometries bloomed and collapsed, creating shapes that seemed to extend beyond the 3-dimensional confines of the display. "What am I looking at?" Talia asked, leaning forward. "I believe," Park said slowly, "they're showing us how they see, their perceptual framework." A shudder ran through the ship. Warning lights flashed across multiple consoles. "Energy spike," Lieutenant Webb reported, voice tense. "Something's scanning us. Every system, every molecule, it's like we're being disassembled informationally." "Shut down the broadcast," Talia ordered. Ravi's fingers flew across her interface. "I can't, the connection's been hijacked." The patterns on the view screen accelerated, becoming increasingly complex. Several crew members looked away, complaining of sudden headaches and vertigo. "It's not just a visual pattern," Park whispered. "It's restructuring itself to interface directly with our neural architecture. They're trying to optimize communication." Talia felt it too, a strange pressure behind her eyes as if something was gently probing the structure of her thoughts. Not invasive but curious, methodical. "Let it happen," she said, surprising herself. Everyone remain calm. The pressure intensified, then abruptly released. The chaotic patterns on the view screen resolved into a single, elegant structure, a mathematical model that somehow conveyed both complexity and perfect order. And then words in clear, precise standard English. "We have been waiting. The shadow between galaxies holds what you seek. Your ancestors knew this." As suddenly as it had appeared, the message vanished. The ship's systems returned to normal. "Get me Earth Command," Talia ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "Tell them we've made contact." Lieutenant Webb hesitated. "Commander, there's something else." During the interaction, the ship's quantum computer was accessing our historical archives. What was it looking for? Ancient human mythology, specifically stories about the spaces between stars. Talia turned back to the viewport, staring into the void with new understanding. The boundary was not an endpoint but a threshold, and something waited beyond it, something that knew humanity better than humanity knew itself. "Chart a course," she said softly, "we're going deeper." Dr. Victor Harlow had spent 30 years studying xenobiology, but nothing had prepared him for the creatures that called themselves the Sentinels. "You understand," the being called Morrigan said, its voice reverberating inside Victor's mind rather than through the recycled air of the research station. "We have maintained the boundary for 17 million of your years." Victor nodded, trying to focus on the shifting form before him. The Sentinel appeared humanoid only by choice, a courtesy to its human hosts. Beneath the illusion, Victor glimpsed something vast and geometric, existing partially in dimensions his brain couldn't properly process. "What I don't understand," he replied carefully, "is why the boundary needs maintaining at all." 3 days had passed since the Nebula Seeker's encounter at the Galactic Edge. 3 days since Commander Reeves' transmission had reached Outpost Terminus, where Victor served as chief xenobiologist. And 2 days since the Sentinels had simply appeared inside the station, bypassing every security protocol as if they didn't exist. Morrigan's form rippled, colors shifting through spectrums Victor could name and others he couldn't. "Your species thinks of space as empty. It is not. The void between galaxies teems with entities. Most are harmless to you, some are not." Behind Victor, Professor Emilia Valdez, the station's quantum physicist, made notes on her tablet. She hadn't spoken since the Sentinels arrived, absorbing every word with the intensity that had made her reputation in academic circles. "These entities," Victor pressed, "are they like you?" "No," the word carried finality. "We evolved within the boundaries of stellar matter as you did. We simply reached our potential sooner." The implication hung in the air. The Sentinels considered themselves more advanced but fundamentally similar to humanity, which meant the things beyond the boundary were something else entirely. "The Nebula Seeker reported receiving a message," Victor said. "Something about our ancestors knowing about what lies in the shadow between galaxies. What did that mean?" Morrigan's form contracted slightly. "The earliest humans understood more than you give them credit for. They're myths of creatures in the darkness between stars. These were not mere stories." Emilia finally spoke, her voice steady despite the extraordinary circumstances. "Are you saying ancient humans encountered these void entities?" "Not directly, but they sensed them. Your species has always been unusually perceptive for being so young." Morrigan turned what might have been a face toward the viewport, where the thin starfield of the galactic edge was visible. "The void entities communicate in dreams, in whispers that bypass conscious thought. Your ancestors interpreted these impressions through the lens of their limited understanding, gods, demons, creatures of shadow." Victor felt a chill, and now the Nebula Seeker has made direct contact. "Yes," Morrigan's form pulsed with what might have been concern, "which has accelerated matters considerably. The boundary is weakening." "What boundary?" Emilia demanded. "You keep referring to it, but our sensors detect nothing unusual at the galactic edge." "Because you do not know how to look," Morrigan replied. "The boundary exists in quantum states your science has barely begun to theorize. It was established when your species was still confined to a single continent on Earth by a coalition of galactic civilizations including my own." "A quarantine," Victor realized aloud. "A protection," Morrigan corrected. "The void entities are not malevolent in any way you would understand. They are curious, but their curiosity is transformative. Contact changes biological life in ways that cannot be reversed." Victor exchanged glances with Emilia. The implications were staggering. And now that the Nebula Seeker has made contact. "Now they are coming," Morrigan's form flared brightly. "The boundary has held for millions of years because the void entities respected our wishes, but they have waited patiently, watching the evolution of consciousness within the galaxy. Your signal was an invitation they have longed for." A new presence materialized beside Morrigan, another sentinel, this one calling itself Tersh. Unlike Morrigan's shifting blues and silvers, Tersh manifested in deep crimsons and golds. "We have received word from our observers," Tersh communicated directly into their minds. "The Nebula Seeker has crossed into the void. Commander Reeves has taken her vessel beyond our jurisdiction." Morrigan's form darkened, then it begins. Emilia stepped forward. What begins, what happens now? Transformation, Tersh answered. The void entities will reshape those humans according to their understanding of life, and through them they will reach the rest of your species. Is this a threat? Victor asked, tension building in his chest. Are you saying Earth is in danger? Not danger, Morrigan corrected. Change. Your civilization stands at a crossroads that all advanced species eventually face, the choice between remaining as you are or becoming something your ancestors would no longer recognize. The Sentinels made their choice eons ago, Tersh added. We chose preservation over transformation. We maintain the boundary to protect that choice. Victor felt the weight of revelation settling over him, and now humanity must choose. Yes, both Sentinels communicated simultaneously. But first, you must understand what awaits beyond the boundary. Only then can your choice be informed. Morrigan extended what might have been a hand, a geometric pattern of light that condensed into a small crystalline object. It hovered in the air between them. This contains the accumulated knowledge of 17 species who encountered void entities over the past billion years. Some chose transformation. Others retreated behind the boundary. Victor reached for the crystal, but Emilia caught his wrist. Wait, she said, if we accept this, are we making the choice for all of humanity? No, Morrigan assured them. The choice belongs to each individual, but someone must bear witness to what lies ahead. Someone must carry understanding back to your people. Victor met Emilia's eyes. In them, he saw the same mixture of terror and exhilaration he felt, the vertigo of standing at the edge of everything humanity had ever known. We'll take it, he said, reaching for the crystal again. As his fingers closed around it, information flooded his consciousness, images and concepts too vast to comprehend all at once. He saw civilizations transformed into networks of pure energy, species that had abandoned physical form entirely to become thought patterns in the void. Beings that existed simultaneously across multiple galaxies, their consciousness expanded beyond anything human minds could grasp. And behind it all, the void entities themselves, ancient, patient, and utterly alien. As Victor collapsed to his knees under the weight of revelation, Morrigan's final message echoed in his mind. The boundary keepers can only maintain the threshold. We cannot decide which side of it you belong on. That choice has always been yours. Navigator Jadon Akafer had never expected to chart a course beyond the galaxy itself. The void isn't empty, he said, fingers dancing over the navigation console of the expedition vessel Horizon Breaker. It's singing. Captain Freya Donovan nodded grimly. 2 weeks had passed since they'd received the emergency transmission from the Nebula Seeker, and 1 week since they'd crossed the boundary themselves. The Horizon Breaker carried Earth's best scientific minds and a detachment of Marines just in case. Can you locate the Seeker? Freya asked, peering over Jadon's shoulder at the holographic display. There's no need to locate us, we're right here. Everyone on the bridge froze. Standing among them was Commander Talia Reeves or something wearing her form. She hadn't been there a moment ago. Commander, Freya's hand moved subtly toward her sidearm. The figure that looked like Talia smiled. Yes and no, I retain Talia's memories and consciousness, but I've been expanded. Security Chief Marcus Rivera stepped forward, scanner in hand. You're not registering as organic life, Commander. Correct, not Talia replied calmly. My crew and I have shed our physical limitations. Jadon studied the apparition. There was something strange about its edges, a shimmering quality, as if the commander's form wasn't quite fixed in three-dimensional space. What happened to you? He asked. Not Talia's eyes shifted, becoming momentarily filled with stars. We made contact with the void entities. They offered transformation and we accepted. Transformation into what? Freya demanded. Something more, not Talia gestured, and the bridge view screen activated on its own. It showed the Nebula Seeker floating in the void, but the ship glowed with internal light that pulsed in complex patterns. We exist simultaneously as matter and energy now. Our consciousness extends beyond our bodies. Dr. Farah Rahman, the expedition's xenobiologist, pushed to the front of the gathered crew. Are you still human? She asked bluntly. By genetic definition, yes. By experiential parameters, not Talia smiled again. We have memories of being human, but we remember it as you might remember childhood, a limited state outgrown. Farah exchanged worried glances with Jadon. They'd been briefed about the Sentinel's warning, about species that had encountered the void entities and chosen transformation. But seeing it manifest in a fellow human was profoundly unsettling. "What do you want from us?" Freya asked, her voice steady despite the extraordinary situation. "To help you understand the choice that awaits humanity." Not Talia extended her hand. "Come to our ship, see what we've become." "That's not happening," Marcus interjected. "For all we know, this is some kind of trap." Not Talia's expression remained serene. "No trap, but the invitation stands. Your vessel will remain here unharmed. Select representatives may join us to witness, then return to Earth with full knowledge of what awaits." Jadden found himself stepping forward before he could reconsider. "I'll go." Jadden's Freya began, but he cut her off. "Someone has to see, Captain. We can't make an informed decision otherwise." Dr. Rahman moved to stand beside him. "I'll go too. As a scientist, it's my responsibility to observe and report accurately." Freya hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. "2 hours, if you're not back, we're coming after you." She fixed her gaze on Not Talia. "Are we clear?" "Perfectly." Not Talia extended her hands to Jadden and Farah. "No need for shuttles, we travel differently now." Before Jadden could question this, the world dissolved around him. For an instant, he existed everywhere and nowhere. His consciousness stretched across impossible distances. His perception expanded to encompass wavelengths he'd never known existed. Then reality reassembled and he stood aboard the Nebula Seeker. Except it wasn't the ship he'd studied in mission briefings. The interior glowed with geometric patterns that shifted and flowed like living mathematics. The crew moved through these patterns as if they were part of them, their bodies semi-transparent, filled with the same flowing light. "What happened to the ship?" Farah whispered beside him, her scientific detachment momentarily abandoned in the face of the impossible. Lieutenant Damian Webb, or what had been Webb, approached. Like Talia, he appeared mostly human, but with that same curious quality of existing partially beyond physical space. "We've rewritten its molecular structure," he explained. "And our own. The void entities showed us how to exist in multiple states simultaneously." Jadden reached out to touch a flowing pattern of light. It felt solid yet ephemeral under his fingers, like touching an electric field. "But why? What's the purpose?" "Purpose is a human concept," Webb replied. "The void entities don't think in terms of goals or destinations. They simply are existing in states of perpetual becoming." Talia reappeared, accompanied by what Jadden initially mistook for another transformed crew member. But as his eyes adjusted, he realized this being had never been human. It existed as a complex lattice of light and shadow, folding through dimensions he could barely perceive. "This is Nemara," Talia introduced, "one of the void entities who first contacted us." The being pulsed in what might have been greeting. No words were spoken, but Jadden felt concepts unfurling in his mind: ancient, patient curiosity, joy at connection, anticipation of sharing. Farah staggered slightly. "It's in my head," she gasped. "They communicate directly through quantum entanglement between conscious particles," Talia explained. "Your brain is interpreting it as best it can." Nemara's form shifted, and suddenly Jadden understood. The void entities existed primarily as patterns of consciousness, not bound to specific physical forms. They moved between stars as easily as humans walked between rooms, experiencing the universe as a vast interconnected whole rather than discrete locations. "They've existed since before the formation of galaxies," Talia continued. "They watched the first stars ignite, and they've been waiting for species like ours to evolve, species capable of comprehending them." "Why?" Jadden asked, though he was beginning to sense the answer. "Loneliness," Webb said simply. "Even immortal beings desire connection." Nemara pulsed again, and Jadden received impressions of cosmic timescales, billions of years of watching, waiting. The void entities had observed countless civilizations rise and fall, but rarely found any capable of perceiving them without fundamental transformation. "The Sentinels fear them," Jadden realized aloud. "The Sentinels fear change," Talia corrected. "They encountered the void entities early in their development and chose to remain as they were. They built the boundary to prevent other species from being offered the choice that frightened them." Farah had recovered her scientific composure and was scanning everything with instruments from her belt. "These energy patterns, they're unlike anything in our records. The information density alone is—" She trailed off, overwhelmed by the implications. "You have to choose," Talia said softly. "All of humanity does. You can retreat behind the boundary the Sentinels maintain, continuing your current evolutionary path, or you can accept transformation and join something greater than yourselves." Jadden looked around at the transformed crew, at the being called Nemara, at the ship that was no longer just a ship. And if Earth chooses transformation, what happens then? Talia smiled, a human expression on a face that was becoming less human by the moment. Then you become like us, free to explore not just the physical universe but the spaces between, free to exist across multiple dimensions, free to evolve beyond anything you can currently imagine. And if we refuse, Farah asked, then the boundary remains. The Sentinels will strengthen it and humanity will continue as before, confined to conventional space, conventional forms, conventional thinking. As Namara pulsed one final time, Jadin received a devastating clarity. This wasn't just about transformation versus stasis. It was about two fundamentally different conceptions of what life could be, what consciousness itself meant. And somehow, he and Farah would have to convey this impossible choice to a humanity that had barely begun to grasp its place among the stars. Chief Science Officer Nora Fleming stood before the United Earth Council, the crystalline data core pulsing in her palm. 3 months had passed since the Horizon Breaker had returned from beyond the galactic boundary. 3 months of analysis, debate, and growing global unrest as humanity grappled with the revelation that they were not alone and that their very nature as beings was being called into question. Distinguished representatives, she began, her voice carrying through the vast chamber in Geneva, I present the final analysis of what we've come to call the Transcendence Proposition. Behind her, holographic displays activated, showing the transformed Nebula Seeker and its crew. The images had leaked to the public weeks ago, sparking religious fervor and scientific controversy in equal measure. The void entities exist in a state we can barely comprehend, Nora continued. But after extensive study of the data provided by Navigator Okafor and Dr. Raman, we've confirmed that they are offering humanity a genuine evolutionary leap. Council Chair Takumi Nakamura leaned forward. And the costs of this leap, Dr. Fleming? The abandonment of our current physical form, Nora answered honestly. Though not our identity or memories, the transformation appears to preserve the essential consciousness while expanding its capabilities exponentially. Murmurs rippled through the assembled delegates. Representative Olufemi from the African Coalition stood. And the Sentinels, what do they counsel? The Sentinels maintain their position that transformation is an irreversible divergence from our evolutionary path. They've offered to strengthen the boundary to help us remain. Nora paused, searching for the right word, conventional. Conventional, repeated Representative Singh from South Asia. You make it sound like a limitation, Doctor. Perhaps it is, a new voice echoed through the chamber. Heads turned as Jadin Okafor strode down the central aisle. He hadn't been scheduled to speak, and security personnel moved to intercept him, but something in his demeanor made them hesitate. Navigator Okafor, Chair Nakamura acknowledged cautiously, this council has already received your testimony. You've received what I could put into words, Jadin replied, joining Nora at the podium. But words are insufficient, may I? He gestured toward the data core in Nora's hand. After a moment's hesitation, she passed it to him. This contains everything we know about the void entities and the transformation they offer, Jadin said, holding up the crystal for all to see. But knowledge isn't understanding. Let me show you what I experienced. Before anyone could object, Jadin pressed the crystal against the central console. The holographic displays flickered, then expanded dramatically. The chamber darkened as the entire ceiling became a vast projection of the intergalactic void. But it wasn't empty. The void between galaxies bloomed with intricate patterns of energy and information, neural networks on a cosmic scale, pulsing with what could only be described as thought. The void entities were revealed not as distinct beings, but as a vast interconnected consciousness, existing in dimensions beyond conventional space-time. And they weren't strangers. The patterns of their existence echoed eerily with the neural structures of human brains, as if they were distant evolutionary relatives, separated not by biology but by the medium of existence itself. My God, whispered Representative Alvarez from South America, they're like us. Or we're like them, Nora corrected softly. That's what I discovered 3 weeks ago, buried in our oldest genetic archives. The holographic display shifted again, showing human DNA alongside complex energy patterns from the void entities. There are sequences in our genome that don't match any evolutionary pattern on Earth, Nora explained. Sequences that remained dormant until we reached a certain level of neural complexity. The void entities didn't just contact us recently, they've been part of us from the beginning. What are you suggesting, Doctor? Chair Nakamura asked, his voice tight with tension. I'm suggesting that the ancient myths were right. That the entities in the darkness between stars helped shape our evolution, that we carry their potential within us already and always have. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions and objections. Security personnel moved to shut down the unauthorized presentation. In the commotion, no one immediately noticed when the air in the center of the chamber began to shimmer. Silence fell gradually as a figure materialized, Commander Talia Reeves, though her form now barely contained the energy that comprised her transformed being. Beside her stood a more fully transformed crew member, barely recognizable as Lieutenant Damian Webb, his body now almost entirely composed of geometric light patterns. "We apologize for the intrusion," Talia said, her voice resonating strangely. "But time grows short, the boundary weakens with each passing day." Chair Nakamura found his voice first. "How did you bypass our security systems?" Webb's form pulsed. "Physical barriers mean little to us now, we exist partially outside conventional spacetime." "What do you want?" Representative Singh demanded. "To deliver a message," Talia replied, "and an invitation." She raised her hands and the holographic display shifted again. Now it showed Earth, but not as it currently existed. This Earth was surrounded by a luminous network of energy and information. Its inhabitants evolved into beings of light and consciousness that spanned both physical space and the dimensions beyond. They traveled between stars without ships, communicated without technology, and experienced reality on levels currently unimaginable. "This is one possible future," Talia explained, "the path of transformation." The image shifted again, showing a different Earth, recognizable but isolated, a protective boundary separating it from the vast consciousness that permeated the spaces between galaxies. Its people advanced technologically but remained fundamentally unchanged in their nature and limitations. "This is the alternative," Webb said, "the path of preservation." "How can we possibly make such a choice?" Representative Olufemi asked, voice trembling. "You're asking us to decide the evolutionary fate of our entire species." "Every species reaches this junction," Talia replied gently. "The Sentinels did eons ago. They chose preservation and have dedicated themselves to ensuring other species maintain the same option." "But the void entities believe transformation is inevitable," Jadden added. "That consciousness naturally evolves toward higher dimensional states. They've simply been waiting for us to reach the threshold where we could perceive them." Nora stepped forward, her scientific mind racing with implications. "The dormant sequences in our DNA, their activation keys, aren't they, prepared billions of years ago, waiting for us to reach sufficient complexity?" Talia nodded. "The void entities seeded countless worlds with potential. Some species never develop the neural complexity to activate these sequences. Others, like humanity, do." "So our ancestors really did know," Nora whispered. "The ancient myths about gods and higher beings, they were interpreting glimpses of the void entities through prehistoric minds." "Yes," Webb confirmed, "and now you've evolved enough to understand them directly." Chair Nakamura rose from his seat, his authority reasserting itself despite the extraordinary circumstances. "You speak of choice, yet you've already made yours. Why should we trust beings who have abandoned their humanity?" "We haven't abandoned it," Talia countered. "We've expanded it. I remember being human, its joys and limitations. I still value what I was even as I've become something more." "The choice must be individual," Webb added. "No government can decide this for its people. Each human must choose whether to evolve or remain." A profound silence fell over the chamber as the full weight of the situation settled on everyone present. This wasn't just a first contact scenario or a scientific breakthrough. It was a fundamental branching point in human existence, perhaps the most significant moment since consciousness first emerged on Earth. "How would it work," Nora finally asked, "if humanity chooses to accept transformation?" Talia and Webb exchanged a glance that seemed to communicate far more than words could convey. "The boundary would dissolve," Talia explained. "The void entities would extend their consciousness into the galaxy. Those who wish transformation would experience it. Those who don't would be respected in their choice." "Two paths of humanity," Representative Alvarez mused. "Those who remain and those who transcend." "Yes," Webb confirmed, "coexisting but fundamentally different." As the council representatives began an urgent, whispered discussion, Nora moved closer to Talia. "Was it worth it," she asked quietly, "giving up what you were?" Talia's form shimmered, momentarily revealing the vast network of consciousness that now comprised her existence. "I didn't give up anything, Nora, I only gained. The universe is so much larger, so much more wondrous than we ever realized." Her eyes, still recognizably human despite the energy that flowed through them, met Nora's with compassion and understanding. "What lies between stars isn't emptiness," she said softly. "It's possibility, it always has been, and humanity has always been destined to find it." As the council chamber erupted into renewed debate, Nora gazed upward at the holographic display of the void entity's cosmic consciousness. She could almost feel the dormant sequences in her own DNA responding, reaching toward a potential written into her cells billions of years ago.